Shattered Glass Sideswipe exists because someone at Takara gave Armada Wheeljack Sideswipe's head. I'm not kidding. The Armada incarnation of Wheeljack wasn't envisioned as a Sideswipe homage by Hasbro, but evidently someone at Takara saw the similarities between their robot modes and decided to go all in on it. His colors were inspired by a cancelled release of the Wheeljack mold from the 2003 Universe toy line under the name Drench, although FunPub's take has decidedly less brown, thank Primus. As related in Transformers Timelines number 3, Sideswipe was once a soldier of the Autobot regime, led by the tyrannical Optimus Prime. But after witnessing the assassination of his platoon's leader, Drench, clever, his loyalties began to waver until he found himself in the same position. Left for dead by those he considered brethren, he joined the Decepticons, fighting not for freedom, but for revenge, wearing his scar as a badge of honor. Gee, I wonder where they got that from. In 2022, there is one obvious choice for customs of Sideswipe. I am of course referring to Siege Sideswipe, or any of its many variations. I did consider making one using the Kingdom tooling as well, but that hasn't been released with the Sideswipe head outside of a 2-pack with Skywarp. I could design and print a new head and place it on one of the other versions, but the other two uses so far have had some serious issues with availability. I never saw Red Alert at any of the Walgreens near me, and only managed to get one at TFCon Toronto, and Clampdown has apparently been relegated to 1 per case. So, yeah. Hopefully Kingdom Sideswipe will get another run or redeco, but for now I'm sticking with just the Cybertronian form. If I make an Earth Mode one, that will receive a mini showcase. I started, as always, by disassembling the figure. Unfortunately, this figure came out around the time Hasbro decided to use as few screws as possible in favor of pins, which really don't make disassembly easy. Fortunately, I now have both a manual and automatic pin punch, which allowed me to knock out the pins with ease. Most of the removal went smoothly, but I had an issue with the right knee pin and couldn't get it out without tearing it up. I ended up sourcing a new leg for my Siege Red Alert. You won't see me getting too upset about this one though. Red Alert ain't exactly on my A list. With the figure disassembled, I set to work sanding everything down, using a sheet of 300 grit sandpaper to get the surface coarse and remove the existing paint, and then a finer grit to smooth everything out. I also used this time to remove the 3mm nub on the chest plate with a set of nippers and a file. After that came a wash and a bath in the Sonic Cleaner before a good coat of Tamiya light gray surface primer. It was at this point that I added the iconic chest gash. Before I did anything to the plastic, I used a fine-tip Sharpie to draw out the general shape I wanted for it. Obviously this wasn't going to be precise, but it would be a huge help in making sure that it wasn't too big, too deep, too narrow, you get the idea. With this done, I took a cheap soldering iron I got on eBay many years ago and ran it along the outline that I made, increasing pressure in the middle to deepen it. I also pulled some of the plastic outward to roughen the edge up and make it really look like someone cut into him. Now it was time to add some color, and let me tell you, Toby has nothing on sides here. Sideswipe's vehicle mode uses a unique combination of green and dark gray, with a lighter gray on his robot mode limbs. Picking paint colors is usually the hardest part of the whole process for any custom, but in this case I spent about 5 weeks alone looking for a suitable green. Such is the issue when you're trying to match the colors of an uber rare, extra expensive convention exclusive from over a decade ago, and thus all you have for reference are pictures online. Eventually though, I found what I determined to be the best options, and began the next phase. The first parts to receive paint were those that would be visible in alt mode, with the first color applied being Phantom Gray from Vallejo's Mecha color line. Once this had dried, I masked off any areas that I wanted to remain gray after the next color was applied, including the louvers on the rear of the car, which I felt were a more appropriate place to break up the big block of green than having little stripes across the legs. Once I was happy with the mask, I took these parts out again for a coat of Tamiya TS102 Cobalt Green spray paint. This is the first time in quite a while that I've used spray paint for one of these aside from primer, but this was the closest color that I could find to the green on the original toy. The end result was incredibly smooth and clean, and much better than the last custom I used spray paint on, that being my Optimus Prime from Combiner Wars Hotspot. I would pull out my airbrush one more time to paint the limbs, extremities, and head with Vallejo Dark Ghost Gray. I considered leaving these parts the base gray of the primer, but it was a bit too light for the job and a slightly darker shade was warranted. Now came the fun part, painting the chest gash. I first tested the placement of an Autobot insignia, figuring out just how and where I should cut it. Once I'd gotten the two halves lined up properly, I took some Vallejo silver paint, a paper towel, and a stiff bristled brush for a weathering technique called dry brushing. You put some paint on the brush, then wipe most of it off onto your paper towel, and now it's easy to create spots or streaks of silver scratching. I gently dotted the brush along the edges and outside of the wound, careful not to apply too much silver in one spot. Once this was done came another Vallejo metallic, burnt iron, this time applied with several strokes so as to let it flow into the rough, uneven surface of the wound. With the Autobot insignia taken care of, all that was needed was that of the opposite. I deliberately chose not to mask off the face while painting the head, mainly because I was going to paint the eyes. On most other figures, I would gruesomely split the head open to get access to the eyes, but unfortunately that is not possible on Siege Sideswipe without destroying the head in the process. So I just took a fine brush and used Tamiya XF7 Red to paint the eyes, then redid the silver on the face, and touched up the gray that got messed up. With all this done, I added a few more painted details and partially assembled the figure before 2 coats of Alclad matte clear lacquer. And once that dried, it was time for reassembly. And that's how I made my Shattered Glass Sideswipe. I am very pleased with the finished product, especially the way the spray paint turned out. I may wind up using these a little more often in the future. My favorite part is undeniably the chest gash. Very proud of how I pulled this off without accidentally destroying the toy. The one thing I'm not perfectly happy with is my choice of weapons. Armada Wheeljack and, by extension, the original SG Sideswipe feature missiles that double as... clubs, I guess? TF Wiki calls them Tonfa, but that clearly isn't what these are. I can't say I've seen any other Transformer using Tonfa though, so I decided that was gonna be Sideswipe's thing. I decided to do a mock-up of this using the rocket launchers from my 2 red alerts and... well, dang. It's amazing how much better these work as Tonfa than as rocket launchers. I may design and print some purpose-made Tonfa pieces in the future, but for now, these are just fine. I'm very happy to have this finished. This is a custom that I've wanted to do for years, and it's nice to finally have him here among my other Shattered Glass Decepticons, of which I only have 3 others. If only Hasbro had made a better Megatron. Thanks for watching this episode of Custom Showcase. If you enjoyed seeing the process of how I make these, leave a like and subscribe for future installments. The next custom Transformer I plan to start will be a take on RC that Hasbro just refuses to give us. And if trains are your thing, I'm also working on another HO Scale Thomas and Friends character. My name is KeeperofToast, and I will see you all next time.